Why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner.
You're watching Chew the Fat. I am Smooth, and today we're going to discuss the meeting between Donald Trump and the National Association for Black Journalists. And we'll discuss how productive or non-productive this actually was for the black community. I'm going to jump right into the meat and potatoes. I'm not going to do too much of the intro stuff, but it might be a lengthy video, so get your popcorn ready, sit down, get comfortable if you aren't already. And if you find value in this video, please do share it. And a subscription to the Chew the Fat with Smooth channel would be awesome. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video.
As journalists, we use opportunities like these both to inform our reporting, but also to help voters understand the choices that they face in a consequential and historic election year. NABJ has partnered with PolitiFact to fact check this conversation in real time. You can.
Now that's awesome. Fact check in real time is a great idea, particularly when you're dealing with politicians, but it's not a friendly thing to do. And this doesn't have to be friendly, but I just want you to understand the tone of what's happening here. Fact check, real time. We got you.
Access that feed on social media using the hashtag.
Listen to the crowd. They thought he was going to come in capping.
NABJ fact check. Again, the hashtag is NABJ fact check. We have a lot to get to, and we do not want to waste any time. So let's bring out the former president of the United States, the Republican nominee for president, former President Donald Trump.
Man, this sounds like the the royalty-free music that you get. That was really awful. It was. I would be upset coming into this intro music.
Hi, Mr. Trump. Rachel Scott, BBC. Thank you. How are you?
Now, there's a lot of people who said that he wasn't greeted. I mean, he was introduced, and she did greet him. It was extremely professional, not woman-friendly, but it's not necessary. But she did greet him.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabbit to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist.
That smug face.
You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Sheesh. She is coming in hot. She is coming in hot. And I understand what we're doing here. I know she wants to hold him accountable, right? And I dig it. Hold the brother accountable. I am not against that. Not even a little bit. I think we should hold him accountable. We should hold his feet to the fire. I dig it. However, I've interviewed plenty of people. Those who follow the show, you understand that I've interviewed a lot of people. And one thing that I do, if I want the interview to be productive, is you prime the interviewee, meaning you start off easy and you go ahead and try to warm them up into it. This right here is going to make him defensive as hell. Of course it is. Of course he's going to be absolutely defensive after this. He's going to be angry. Like, just listen to the verbiage. She came in hot, and I understand that she had an agenda. And listen, make no mistake about it. Everyone has an agenda. But then now it's just understanding, what is that agenda? Right now, this is typical gaslighting. That's what it looks like. You start off the interview with that. That is, in my opinion, bogus. if you are actually concerned about what he's going to do for black people. That right there is just going to anger him, and it's not going to be productive from this moment out. You're going to actually have to recover from what she just did right here. That was disgusting, in my personal opinion. I don't think that that's how you prime an interviewee. She should know better. This is the National Association of Black Journalists. You should know better than that. You should not go into an interview starting like that. Right now, this seems like her own selfish agenda to go viral and say, look what I did. I held him accountable. Yeah, right. That's not going to help him bring better policies to black people. But only going to see what she does.
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. A first question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity.
Why are there people allowed to stand up and cast shadows in front of an interview this important? This is like watching a bootleg movie. I don't think that they should have had people running around doing that. That's absurd. You need to sit the hell down when people are filming a potential president. But anyway, he actually fed into it, which is silly on his part, right? He should have just brushed his shoulders off and been cool about it. So she knew that gaslighting would have this effect on him. And this is bogus that they were late, 35 minutes late, when you have an interview and you are talking to a former president, potentially your next president, and you're not ready. You should have been ready hours ahead. If I had an interview with Donald Trump, I'm there like the night before, and I'm probably not leaving because nothing's going to go wrong during this particular interview. Or if it were Kamala Harris, same thing. Any person who is a high profile figure, you just need to be ready. There is zero excuse for you reinforcing the stereotype. We're going to keep it going.
Opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. Done so much. And, you know, and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke. And I saved them and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited.
Oh, wow. See, that you brought him there under false pretenses. That's wild.
Me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, you know, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was
Mr. President,
wrong.
I would love
I think
you
it's
can
a
answer
very
the
nasty question. Wow. I have answered the question. I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
That might be a stretch, my man, but we're going to keep it going.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act.
For you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir, and then we'll move on to other questions here. Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition?
DEI.
Give me a definition.
Sir, I'm asking you a question,
No,
a very direct question.
Define it for me if you.
Why is she making it so difficult? She knows exactly what he means. This is what I'm talking about when I say gaslighting. Like, she just got condescending. She really just gave him what the acronym is. That's not what a person means when they say to define it. Give an explanation of your interpretation of it. That's all he was asking for. But she decided to be condescending and say what she said. And that's bogus again, man.
I just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say, no, I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She is always
But
Listen, there's a whole bunch of nonsense about what race she is. Personally, I don't care that she's Indian or black or whatever it is that she is, or her code switching like she does or whatever, because I'm not a racist. And two, it's so much more that you can hose Kamala Harris about if that's what you want to do. You can literally rip her to shreds based on her policy and failures. You can do that. So why they're choosing to be silly about it and go for stupid things like, oh, well, she's been a 304, like how Judge Joe Brown is doing. I think that's completely irrelevant. And I also think that talking about her race is irrelevant. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the fact that she articulated that she's not going to do anything specific for black people. That's what she said out of her own mouth. So I think we should be more concerned with that than whatever race she is. Keep it going.
As a black woman,
I
she went to a
respect either
historically black
one.
college.
I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe that
I think
she is
somebody should look into that too when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
It's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some
I
Republicans
really don't
have
know.
said?
I mean, I really don't know. Could be. There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length, and we had a great interview.
Sure, the Fox News correspondent. That's who Harris is. So, I mean,
I think, and I heard you got very good ratings on that.
Well, you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion. Look, I want to talk about why you're here today. I mean, it is not lost on us how divided we are as a country. And as you were coming today, we really got to see that we are divided along the lines of race, along the lines of gender. And there is this question of, in this moment where we are, why come here? What is your message today?
My message is to stop people from invading our country that are taking, frankly, a lot of problems with it. But one of the big problems, and a lot of the journalists in this room I know and I have great respect for, a lot of the journalists in this room are black. I will tell you that coming from the border.
No kidding. It's the NABJ, dude. Bro, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? They probably should be a bunch of black journalists. What are we doing?
There are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job.
That's a good question.
Anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
And
Mr.
they're taking the employment away from black people. They're coming in, they're invading. It's an invasion of millions of people, probably 15, 16, 17 million people. I have a feeling it's much more than that. And everybody's been seeing what's happened. The first group of people, the black population, is affected most by that. And Kamala is allowing it to happen. She's the border czar. She's the worst.
And that's real talk. Because at the end of the day, we can go ahead and say, hey, you know what? What's a black job? And then try to be offended by it. Or we could look at it like, yeah, we know a lot of what the jobs are that black people have. We know that there's a lot of improvement to be done, right? There's not enough black doctors. there's not enough black astrophysicists, we're not populating those jobs at the numbers that other races are. Those are the facts. That's what we need to improve. So, of course, if many black people, right, and there's different reasons for that, right? Not because they're inherently uneducated or, there's many different circumstances that black people have to deal with. But the fact of the matter is we are at a lot of entry-level positions. So, of course, if undocumented people are coming in and taking some of those labor jobs and even infringing on union jobs now, that's actually happening because it's cheap labor. Of course, black people would be affected first. And that's why it's the biggest threat to black people as it is right now. Surely we should try to elevate ourselves beyond entry-level positions. We should be educated and everything else. But as it is right now, you know where we fall. So it's valid.
Border czar in the history of the world. There's never been a border czar like this. She's never even essentially been. She said she was there once, but not the right part of the border. So she was a border czar. She's done a horrible job. These people are coming into our country, and they're taking black jobs and Hispanic jobs, and frankly, they're taking union jobs. Unions are being very badly affected by all of the millions of people that are pouring into our country. And one thing, as we discussed, many of these people are coming in from mental institutions, from prisons, from jails. They're gang members in other countries. Other countries are setting loose their prisoners. They're opening up their prisons and their mental institutions, and they're taking their bad people, drug dealers.
Now, we'll say that there are some countries that are absolutely allowing people to just come over here. They're not vetted, right? I do not think it's nearly as bad as people are trying to make it seem. I don't think that it's a disproportionate amount of criminals coming through as if a lot of Republicans may like to make it seem. That's not valid. There are some, absolutely, and there's completely the potential for criminals and murderers and people who just have nefarious intent in mind, right? That's fine. That is a thing. But I don't think we should exaggerate it to make it seem like it's some sort of an epidemic here, because this is typical fear-mongering. And I don't appreciate it when people use fear-mongering tactics to try to gain my vote. And you shouldn't either.
Gang members, and they're bringing them into the United States. And by the way, their crime rate is going down, and our crime rate is going to be a disaster.
Mr. President?
Pay attention to the language. He didn't say our crime rate is bad. He said it is going to be a disaster. So if people have already came over and the numbers didn't suddenly skyrocket, then it's probably not as horrible as many Republicans would like to make it seem.
I want to get into how you address some of the issues with black communities. And I say that plural because we live in communities of color that are different. We're not all the same. We don't vote the same. We don't think the same.
True.
It's not monolithic. So as you come here today, I want to talk.
Best statement of today. Best statement of today. It is not monolithic. And that's the problem. We get jumbled in together as if we all think exactly the same. We talk exactly the same. There are many different cultures. There's many different religions, many different types of households that we're raised in. We're not a monolith. Let's go.
Talk about something that bursts, and this is the weight of the inflation on this country right now. The nonprofit Money Management International recently released data from its mid-year analysis that we have found a 52% rise in people who are seeking counseling for being in credit debt. They're paying for food that is sky high on their credit cards, and now they can't pay that off. The credit counseling nonprofit MMI, as I said, is saying now that they've seen surges that they haven't seen since we were in a pandemic of people in financial trouble. Much of that falls on the shoulders of single moms, single black moms, when you look statistically.
Yeah.
How do you turn it around? What's your plan for the black community when it comes to money?
So, first of all,
Holy smokes. This is how you ask a question, Rachel Scott. This is how you ask a question that had substance. That is valid. It's a shame that it took a Fox News correspondent to do it. But damn, best question of the day. That actually makes sense. We're talking about some policy. Let's get to the money.
it's very hard to hear you for whatever reason because of the fact that they have bad equipment. Because I guess, you know, this woman was unable to get the right equipment.
That's unnecessary,
it's
bro.
It's very hard for me to hear you, but I can hear every other word. It's very difficult, actually. But so I don't know if they can fix it or do something with it, but I'll do the best I can with it. The inflation is absolutely destroying our middle class, our working class, virtually every class. Inflation is a disaster in our country. Inflation is a country buster. It breaks every country. And we had, in my opinion, the worst inflation we've had. They say it's 58 years, but I think it's much more than that. It's been devastating. And if you just take a look.
That shouldn't be an opinion-based answer. It's not about your opinion because you can look up that statistical data to see if it's the worst inflation or not. It's really just dollars and cents and percentages. It shouldn't be an opinion.
Look at a lot of things they don't include, like interest rates. Interest rates went from 2.4% to 10%, and you can't get the money. People can't buy houses. They no longer have the American dream. Young people, young black people, they don't have the American dream anymore. They can't buy a house. They can't borrow the money because of the cost of the money. They can't buy it because of the cost of housing, because of the cost to build it, because of inflation. Inflation is a disaster, and it's destroying our country, and it's destroying the black community.
So far, he hasn't gotten to an answer. What he did was deflect by expanding on her question. We're going to keep it going, though.
Probably as much
so what do you do?
Than any.
What's your plan?
You know what we have to do? We have to bring down the cost of energy, and that's going to bring down the cost of inflation. This was all started with a bad energy policy by Joe Biden. By the way, just if I might, I was running against a man named Biden. You probably saw that. And he was losing very badly in the polls, and then he had a rather bad debate. I would say it was a bad debate. I'd say it was one of the worst debates in history. And his poll numbers crashed. And instead of saying, you know, let's keep going and maybe something happens the other way, they said, oh, we're going to replace him. Let's just replace him. That's like you're in a fight, a prize fight.
This is seriously off topic. I'm just going to say, like, it's rather frustrating to see the interview go like this, and the interviewers allow it. This is where it kind of it's frustrating. I'm having a hard time watching this, and I'm sure you are too. I'm not appreciating the deflecting. I'm not appreciating them just expanding on questions instead. I'm not appreciating him dodging them. And I'm not appreciating the fact that they did not do a better job of redirecting him. And there's an art to that. You can just ask the question again. She did it just now a little bit. So what do you do? That's what her response was when she saw him just going way, way out there. I think she should have stopped him a lot earlier than that. But there's not enough of that because he's obviously just going way off topic, and it's not productive. Right now, you're wasting minutes. It's only a matter of time before they pull him. Anyone who's running for president is extremely busy, so every single moment counts. You have no time to waste when you're talking to someone who's running for president. I'm sorry. You have to get to the meat and potatoes right away.
Fighters in a fight. He's not doing where you say, let's bring in another fighter. So our whole campaign was steered toward him, and now we have to steer it toward him. But ultimately,
they just let him go
because they have bad policy. They have policies of open borders, unbelievable open borders, horrible energy policies. They want to get rid of, as you say, gasoline in cars. They want to get rid of oil. They want to get rid of efficient efficient heating.
Mr. President.
Environmentally, what they're doing is killing our country. They're absolutely destroying our country. But the inflation is the thing that's hurting the black worker, the black population, and every other population within our country. Inflation is the worst it's been, I think, in over 100 years. And they'll fact check it. They'll say it's only 58. Whatever it may be, they don't add all the numbers. They don't add the really bad numbers, and you can check that too. But inflation, Harris, is absolutely destroying this country and the people in our country. Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
President, can I ask you another question
Yes,
that is also impacting black Americans?
And that's very clear now. Good.
I'm sorry?
It's very clear. I hear you.
Okay. So Sonia Massey, someone from Illinois, an unarmed black woman, was shot the other day in her home by a deputy sheriff. The deputy has since been charged with murder. You've said police would get immunity from prosecution if you win. Why should someone like that officer have immunity, in your opinion?
Immunity?
Immunity.
I don't know the exact case, but I saw something, and it didn't look good to me. It didn't look good to me. Are you talking with the water? Right?
Time out, and time out, and time out, and time out. That right there, like I can't see. This is obviously a very important view, right? We have a bunch of rallies with Donald Trump speaking of complete immunity. That was his phrase. He said, we're going to offer police officers complete immunity. So at this point, when you see him address something like this, it really looks bad. They're not making a good case for him to give police officers complete immunity. I think complete immunity is absurd. I do think that we should support our officers, because I will tell you, there are far many good officers than there are poor officers. However, the poor officers are always highlighted, particularly because most times they delete someone for no apparent reason. Well, we have an apparent reason, but no good reason. If someone is a threat, then that actually is a good reason. So there is such thing as a good reason. If they pose a threat to you or someone else, then it is a good reason to delete someone. However, the reasons that we see on video, thank goodness for body cams at this point, you start running into some trouble here when you try to spit complete immunity to police. I want to see what he's got for this.
Right?
Yeah, well, police unions are not backing this person either.
Okay, yeah.
But again,
they're going to be charging the officer. I guess they're charging the officer.
So why should he receive immunity?
Well, he might not. I mean, it depends. It depends on what happens. I'm talking about people that are much different cases than that. We need people to protect ourselves. And
yeah, but that's not what complete immunity is. That's not what complete immunity is. Complete immunity means there's nothing that could happen if he is on the clock. That's pretty much what complete immunity is. That's what the phrase that he used was complete immunity. And in a situation like that, you cannot have complete immunity because he would just get away with it. There is no trial. Donald Trump is saying, well, he might not. He might not. Yeah, but it shouldn't be no might. He should be charged no matter what, because we've seen it with our own eyes. We've seen it with our own eyes. We watched it, and you watched it, and you should be concerned about it, particularly with the idea that you're talking about complete immunity. This should be something that if you're going to visit a bunch of black journalists, it's irresponsible for you to not completely be familiar with this situation, and not only completely being familiar with the situation, expecting this question, and not only expecting this question, but having a solid answer as to what you plan on doing for it. So this leaves people, I'm sure, perplexed, dissatisfied, uneasy, and it's not going to help. It's not going to help your case. So far, this is a horrible interview. I've seen some good ones, but maybe Rachel Scott gaslighting worked. Or maybe you were just ill-prepared for the situation. I'll let you be the judge down below.
by the way, in Chicago, as an example, a few weeks ago, July 4th weekend, They had 117 shootings and 17 deaths.
Deflection.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. We need to have our police officers have the respect and dignity back. In this particular case, I saw something that didn't look good to me. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
So can you get a little more specific back to the immunity question? Who would make those
Well, right now, for the most part, people are protected by their unions, by their police unions, or by their police departments. But I'm saying if I felt, or if a group of people would feel that somebody was being unfairly prosecuted because the person did a good job maybe with crime, or made a mistake, an innocent mistake. There's a big difference between being a bad person and making an innocent mistake. But if somebody made an innocent mistake, I would want to help that person.
What would those exceptions be? What would determine
You
an
go
innocent
after
mistake?
somebody and it's a very close call and it's very dangerous. And you know, they have, the policeman's life and woman is a very difficult thing because sometimes you have less than a second to make a, life and death decision. And
We get it, but this was not the case. She asked you about a specific scenario. You knew you saw it because you brought up the fact with the hot water, which was weird because that was, I guess, what you considered the threat. I don't know why you brought that up, but you obviously saw the situation, right? So with that is what you should be addressing. That's what you should be addressing. How can you offer immunity? Complete immunity, which you said in front of a different crowd, which is also, in my opinion, code switching. Why would you say that in front of another crowd that you thought would accept it, and then now come here and say something different?
sometimes very bad decisions are made. They're not made from an evil standpoint, but they're made from the standpoint of they made a mistake.
So I want to follow up really quickly. I find it interesting because you do talk about reining in prosecutors, especially when it comes to prosecutors that are prosecuting you. Why doesn't that skepticism apply to law enforcement?
Well, I've been prosecuted because I'm a political opponent of two people that have weaponized our justice system. I've been prosecuted. I just won the big case in Florida. Everyone said that was the biggest case. That was the most difficult case. And I just won it. Now, Biden has a similar case, except much worse. I was protected under the Presidential Records Act. Biden wasn't, because he wasn't president at the time. And he had 50 years worth of documents. And they ruled that he was incompetent, and therefore he shouldn't stand trial. And I said, isn't that something? He's incompetent, and he can't stand trial, and yet he can be president. Isn't that nice?
Mr. President,
But they released him on the basis that he was incompetent. They said he had no memory, and he was a nice old guy, but he had no memory, and so, therefore we're not going to prosecute him. I won the case, and it got very little publicity. I didn't notice ABC doing any publicity on it, George.
We covered you extensively, sir. I'd love to move over on to different topics.
I didn't notice you do any publicity on it at all. I won the case, the biggest case. This is an attack on a political opponent. I have another one where
sir,
I have a hostile judge.
We have you for a limited time, sir. I'd love to move on to different
no,
topics.
excuse you. You're the one that held me up for 35 minutes, just so you know.
This is just becoming a dumpster fire at this point.
I want to get back to the campaign. Senator JD Vance is your running mate. He's had a lot of controversy lately, and I want to read you a few things that he has said in the past. He said the Democrats running the country are a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. He's not talking here about how great it is to be a parent. He's attacking what he says are the choices people are making to not have children. Did you know that he had these views about people who do not have children before you picked him to be your running mate?
I also thought that was a weird pick for a VP, but yeah, I'm going to see how he's going to defend this one.
Do you agree with him?
No, I know this. He is very family-oriented, and he thinks family is a great thing. That doesn't mean he thinks that if you don't have a family, it's not. I know people with families. I know people with great families. I know people with very troubled families. And I also know people with no families. They didn't meet the right person. Things happen. You go through life, you don't meet the right person.
But he's not just talking about families here.
And
he also
some
says
of those
that people that don't have children should get less votes than those that do.
I'm just speaking for myself.
Is that your campaign
I think I'm
position?
speaking for him, too. He strongly believes in family. but I know people with great families. I know people with not great families that don't have a family. And the people without the family are far better. They're superior in many cases, okay? He's not saying they're not. What he's saying is that he thinks the family experience is a very important thing. It's a very good thing. But that doesn't mean that if you grow up and you grow older and you don't meet somebody that would be wonderful to meet and would have been good, that that's a bad thing. He's not saying that. My interpretation, you'll have to ask him, actually, but my interpretation is he's strongly family-oriented, but that doesn't mean if you don't have a family, there's something wrong with it.
Just one last point, and then we'll move on. Just one of the bedrock principles of American life is one person, one vote. Senator JD Vance has suggested that someone who has children should have more votes than a person who does not have children. I just want to be clear here. Is that the position of your campaign?
Well, no, but...
That sounds ridiculous. I don't understand how that could be valid. It's actually bizarre that they even addressed it, because I don't see anyone ever trying to put forth a policy so absurd. I don't think so. I think they could have just left that one alone. More time wasted. More time wasted. And it seems as if every time Rachel Scott speaks, that she's more so trying to show how horrible his character is. That's her mission. Versus, hey, man, let's see what policies you have for us. We're going to keep it going, though, because if you let me know down below if you think that this is a productive interview based on the questions that Rachel Scott is asking. I don't think that most of her questions are valid. They're more so character-based opinions and just a bunch of wild stuff. But we're going to keep it going.
It's not something I have ever heard before. I can tell you this. Right now you have illegal aliens coming into our country, many from prisons and many from mental institutions, and they want to give them votes. I don't think they should have votes. They came into our country illegally, and they're taking the vote away from all of the people in this room that have been here a long time, that have worked hard, that in many cases, and you'll see this happening, if I'm not elected, you're going to see it happening. If I am, you're not going to have any problem. But you're going to see it happening a long time. You're going to see the people in this room and people outside of this room are going to be losing their jobs to people that have come into this country illegally.
Mr. President, can we stay with just kind of the state of the race right now? Because I felt like that vice president question, candidate question was right in there with that. Yeah. So let's talk about JD Vance for a little bit. He's had some stumbles out of the gate. I don't know if you're hearing what we hear as reporters, but it's been a tough couple of weeks for him. Why did you choose JD Vance?
Why
did you choose him? And I'm having a hard time hearing, too. Everybody out there can, but it's hard.
I'll tell you why. I chose him because he's a very strong believer in work and the working man and woman, and especially the working man and woman who have been treated very unfairly, because you have many of them in this room, but you have many of those people that were treated very unfairly. They worked very hard and they were treated unfairly. He wrote the book that became a bestseller. The movie became a smash hit. He's a very smart guy without the benefit of having a family that has contacts, like a father that was well connected. He got into Yale Law School. He graduated in 2 years from Ohio State, summa cum laude.
I could kind of see the direction where this is going, although, well, okay, I'll say this. That was a pretty decent question. For whatever reason, I don't know if he just has a maybe just favor towards our Fox News correspondent, Harris. I don't know. Or just the way that she's presenting the questions. But I would have rather her be the leading interviewer, because she's actually asking some valid questions. If she were like just pandering or taking it easy, I wouldn't be with it. But she's actually asking valid questions that I would want to know. As far as his pick for vice president, I understand with the family man situation and stuff, because what Democrats have been doing lately is the opposite, right? Me personally, I believe the nuclear family is what built this country and kept it going for a very long time. I feel like we really have lost family values. Fortunately, I'm in a family who I don't think it's possible for us to lose our values. And for my particular lineage, any children of mine, and hopefully going forward, I don't think we'll lose that family value. But I think it's extremely important. And a lot of the degeneracy that we witness is because the lack thereof family values. So there's some validity to this, although I don't think that's a primary reason that I would vote for someone. I would love for someone to happen to promote family values, but that would never be something that would motivate me to just vote for you just because of that. If that were the difference maker and all things the same, this one supports family values, this one doesn't, of course I'll pick it, but that's not one of my leading issues for me pulling that switch.
I mean, you take a look at, his career has been an amazing career. He started off at a level with a difficult family situation, very difficult with the mother and the father and everything else. He ends up going to Yale Law School and was one of the top students, became the head of the Law Journal. I mean, it's an amazing thing. He's a 4-year, he was in the military with great distinction for 4 years, got out, went into business, became successful in business, very successful in business, actually, did public offerings and other things. And I have to believe in that. I mean, he's somebody that was born in a rough situation. Most of the people know that situation because it was very well documented in his book. And I have a lot of respect for somebody that can get into Yale and become one of the best students in Yale, that meets a young woman at Yale who was also outstanding, and they get married, they have a beautiful family. But he had he's made himself an amazing life. He then goes to Ohio, lives in Ohio, and he had my endorsement. That helped. But he wins the Senate. He becomes a United States Senator. So he's a United States Senator. So, and so, Harris, like I respect you for your success, I respect people for their success.
The reason I asked the question is because the last time you and I sat and talked was the day that you were shot. We'd been together for much of that day. You left to go to Butler, Pennsylvania, and we didn't know what was next.
Yeah.
And 2 days after that,
I cannot understand your microphone.
I know, it is really hard for me to understand.
It's just, I can understand you perfectly.
Because she's closer.
I can understand you. But I can't understand, Harris.
I have a few more questions.
Because of the distance, and the mics are really in lousy shape, but I cannot understand
So,
Are you asking a question?
what you're saying.
So what I wanted to say was the last time we spoke, you said some words that were prophetic because I asked you who you wanted to choose for vice president.
Yeah.
And you said normally it really wouldn't matter what they would bring. You choose somebody that you think has a future, that sort of thing. But you said these words 3.5 hours before an attempted assassination on your life. You told me that bad things happen, Harris. And that's why this decision is important this time. Bad things happen. You said it twice. When you look at JD Vance, is he ready on day one?
Does he what?
Ready on day one, if he has to be.
I've always had great respect for him, and for the other candidates too. But I will say this, and I think this is well documented. Historically, the vice president, in terms of the election, does not have any impact. I mean, virtually no impact. You have 2 or 3 days where there's a lot of commotion as to who, like you're having it on the Democrat side, who it's going to be. And then that dies down, and it's all about the presidential pick. Virtually never has it mattered. Maybe Lyndon Johnson mattered for different reasons of what we're talking about, not for vote reasons, but for political.
Anybody else notice this cameraman got super lazy and stopped zooming and panning at all? He's been on Trump for the longest time right now. Like, you can't even see the interviewers anymore.
Reasons, other political reasons. But historically, the choice of a vice president makes no difference. You're voting for the president, and you can have a vice president who's outstanding in every way, and I think JD is. I think that all of them would have been. But you're not voting that way. You're voting for the president. You're voting for me. If you like me, I'm going to win. If you don't like me, I'm not going to win.
I'm going to get my JD Vance question in.
JD Vance?
I'm going to get my JD Vance question in. To your point and to Rachel's point, he, has a lot of opinions about childless women like myself or divorced people like yourself. Do you think, well, I mean, my point is here.
It was said in a friendly manner.
My point is, do you think the Republican Party is getting a little bit too judgy about people's lives when you think about abortion or when you think about what JD Vance is saying?
I don't think, look, I think that the Democrat Party is really the one that has the problem. I think they're radical on abortion because they're allowing abortion in the 9th month. They're allowing the death of a baby after the baby is born, based on the governor of Virginia. Based on the governor of Virginia, they're allowing the death of the baby after it's born. They're allowing abortions.
What are we even talking about? When have you been able to do that? After the baby is born? Like, yeah, we can't do that. See, and we're focusing on these extremes, and I think it was an idea of the former Virginia governor, but in real life, like, nobody's doing that. I think everybody understands what that means, and I don't think anyone is trying to do it to that extreme, right? And if you would have just said, listen, we're going to stay out of it, I think the Supreme Court, who you elected, the decision makers that you've elected, have did you a disservice by going forth with this particular law, with the Roe versus Wade, because it's ruffled a lot of feathers. It's made people really pissed off. And then what they've also done with affirmative action, that's really pissed people off. And the timing of it couldn't be worse. I wouldn't decide to do these things in so close proximity to you actually running, to gaining votes, because you're going to lose a lot of leverage.
In the 8th and 9th month.
Well, Democrats have denied.
I think they're right. And I think the Republican Party is actually much less. I think I've made them much less radical, perhaps, but the Republican Party, what we're doing is bringing it back to the states where everybody wanted it. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservative, everybody wanted abortion brought back. They didn't want Roe v. Wade in the federal government. They wanted it, everybody
But the
wanted
majority
it
of
back.
Americans oppose Roe v. Wade being overturned.
They don't know about this. Right now, they're voting. It brought it back to the states. Now, I happen to believe in the 3 exceptions. Ronald Reagan believed with rape, incest, life of the mother. I do. I think most people do. I think most Republicans do also. But if you take a look, right now they're doing, it's an amazing thing, out of the federal government, it's in states, and people are voting. And I will say, Ohio is, let's call it a more liberal version, has been approved. Kansas, the same thing, a little bit surprising to a lot of people. But the people are now voting, and it's taking this issue that's been going on for 52 years and has torn our country apart, and it's giving it to the people to vote on. And they're voting. And many states have already voted. Others are in the process of voting. And it's bringing it back to the people and a vote of the people. And it's not at all radical. And again, you have to follow your heart. I happen to believe in the 3 exceptions. Most people believe in the 3 exceptions. Most Republicans believe in the exceptions. But they don't want to see an abortion in the 9th month or the 8th month. Almost everybody agrees to that. And they certainly don't want to see, in the case of the governor of Virginia, the former governor, I might add, who said, we set the baby aside and then we decide what to do. Meaning, what do? We execute the baby. That's a radical, horrible position. And some people want that. I don't want it. Most people don't.
Thank you. Can I just pivot really quickly to another question about, you brought up health, Harris. You're an active man. We see you golfing all the time. But if you win, you'll still be president at 82, which is older than Biden is right now.
But not mentally. Look, mentally.
Here's the question.
He's shot. But most people...
Would you consider...
Shots fired. He really did say that he is...
You're fired.
He's shot. Incredible thing to say about the president.
Most people, I know many people in their 80s and their 90s that are in great shape. Some of our greatest leaders. You look at throughout the world history, the greatest leaders, some of the greatest leaders in the world were in their 80s.
But here's the question. Would you consider stepping down if you felt that your health was declining? Or would you?
Oh, absolutely.
And who would make,
I think I'd know.
How would you make that decision?
I think I'd know. Look, if I came onto a stage like this and I got treated so rudely as this woman treated
Oh my goodness.
That really hurt his heart.
I'm fine with it because she was very rude, sir. Very rude. That was a nasty, that wasn't a question. She
Sir,
didn't
you
ask
can
me a
answer the
question.
question.
She gave a statement. That wasn't a question.
I repeated
You can
your
answer the
statement, sir,
question.
actually.
You said you would. You would
Oh,
make that
absolutely.
decision
If I
to step
thought
down.
that I was failing in some way, I want people to be sharp. I'll go a step further. I want anybody running for president to take an aptitude test, to take a cognitive test. I think it's a great idea. And I took 2 of them and I aced them.
Well, can I just?
I took 2 of them. But let me ask.
Yeah.
I would like to have people running for president, and I don't mean because they're 75 or 85. I think anybody running, I'd like to do it. People say it's not constitutional. I would like to have something passed where you can do it. I think we should know. I mean, I've watched what's happened in the last couple of years under this gentleman, and our country is a mess. We have inflation. We have the millions of people falling in. We have Afghanistan, which was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country.
My goodness, I wish he could stay on topic. It is... this is... I don't even know how to describe it, but it's frustrating. I can say that. Like, people are listening. They want some type of answers. And right now, there is what we complain about Kamala Harris with, word salad. This is crazy. Like, there's too much going on. Just stay on topic. He drifts like crazy on this. It doesn't look like that on the rallies, and I don't know if it's because if he's using a teleprompter or if he doesn't use a teleprompter, but he's really good with those. He can just keep moving and going and keep the flow nice and everything. Even his debate, he did an excellent job. Not excellent. I gave him maybe a B-. It looked like an A+ compared to how Biden performed. That's why he's not here anymore. But these topics, man, and I understand going off on a tangent because sometimes I do. But when people are looking for specific answers and you're asked specific questions, please just answer the question directly. If you want to elaborate on that particular subject, it's fine. But the drifting that we're witnessing here today is absurd.
Country, what he has done to our country, and her too, what they've done to our country, she has been a horrible vice president. She's considered the worst vice president in the history of our country.
Don't mean to interrupt you, but would you consider taking the cognitive test?
Mr. President.
I would love to
and
do
make it public?
Well, I've already taken 2 of them, but I'll do it again.
Mr.
I
President,
suggested,
how do you intend to...
I suggested, Harris, that let's take one. I said, Joe and I will go and take a cognitive test. Now, I'd do it with her, too. I would do it with her also. You know what? She failed her law exam. She didn't pass her law exam, so maybe she wouldn't pass the cognitive test.
Mr. President.
Are you saying she wouldn't pass? Just
Listen, man, he's a savvy businessman, but when it comes to conversation, I can't say he's savvy. Like, there was such a better... He doesn't understand the timing concept. Like, he slides stuff in that are completely irrelevant, that you can't even mask as anything but a stab. It's just a stab. He takes shots to, and it's blatant. It's blatant. He tries to make it seem as if it's not blatant, but it's not related to what you were saying just now. So you're just going off on a tangent and giving out these shots like this for irrelevant material is just mind-boggling. This is why I said this wasn't going to be productive. I think this was a horrible combination of two different types of people who should never speak to each other. Like, just the environment, I guess. I don't know. It's not a good look at all.
to be clear,
I'm just giving you the facts.
to be clear, you don't think Harris.
How do you intend,
She
and
didn't
look,
pass her bar exam, and she didn't think she would pass it, and she didn't think she was going to ever pass it. And I don't know what happened. Maybe she passed it.
She did pass it.
There's a man over here. I think he must work.
Mr. President, I would love to ask you about January 6th. You called yourself the candidate of law and order.
Yeah.
When Time Magazine asked you if you would consider pardoning all the rioters, you said, yes, absolutely.
Sure.
You called them patriots. 140 police officers were assaulted that day. Their injuries included broken bones, at least one officer lost an eye, one had 2 cracked ribs, 2 smashed spinal discs, another had a stroke. Were the people who assaulted those 140 officers, including those I just mentioned, patriots who deserve pardons?
Well, let me bring it back to modern day. Like about 5 days ago, we had an attack on the Capitol, a horrible attack on the Capitol. You saw the people that were protesting and spraying these incredible monuments, bells, lions, all these magnificent limestone and granite with red paint, red spray paint that will never actually come off, especially on the limestone. It will never, I'm a builder, I know about this stuff. It'll never, you'll see it.
The deflection is real. This is probably one of his worst interviews I've ever witnessed.
In 100 years from now, they viciously attacked our government. They fought with police. They fought with them much more openly than I saw on January 6th. What's going to happen to those people? What's going to happen to the people in Portland that destroyed that city?
But, sir, my question is on those.
What's going to happen to the people that tried to
rioters who assaulted officers?
You have to ask.
Would you pardon
what's
those
going to
people?
happen? Oh, absolutely, I would.
You
If
would
they're
pardon
innocent,
those?
If they're innocent, I would pardon them.
They've been convicted.
And by the way, the Supreme Court just well, they were convicted by a very tough system. They were. How come the people that tried to burn down Minneapolis? How come the people that took over a large percentage of Seattle? How come nothing happened to them? How come the people?
Yikes. This is just going down, bro. I don't know what you're doing, man. Like, this right now, bro, is going down. You are bugging out. You're losing it. And now you're starting to have a debate with this lady. And you have to understand who's watching this and who is this for. And if it's black people, then guess what? You're doing a really poor job at it by going into a debate and comparing the two instances. Like, there were so many ways. I would have rather him just continue to deflect or dance his way. He could have, or just even say some things that are general. But this right here, it just looks horrible because now you're saying this is okay, but that's not okay. In similar scenarios, the only difference is the people who were doing one thing was white and the other people were likely mostly black. And that's problematic. That's problematic. So you can't, if you're going to say I'm going to pardon rioters, then you pardon rioters. If you're going to say I'm not going to pardon rioters, then you're not pardoning any rioters. You got to stand on a principle, not stand on people you like.
Sir, we're talking about people that were seen beating officers with flagpoles, dragging them down the stairs. They're on video. Have you seen that video, sir?
Oh, really? Well,
you would pardon those. You would pardon those rioters?
They shot a young lady in the face who was protesting. They shot her in the face. You know, nobody died that day. You do know that. But people died in Seattle. Nobody died, but people died in Minneapolis. You know, people died in Minneapolis. And nothing happens, and nobody ever talks, and nothing happens to those people. But you went after the J6 people with a vengeance. And I'll tell you what about the cops that were, and I'm all for the police, as you know, but what about the police that are ushering everybody into the Capitol? Go in, go in, go in. What about that? Look, nothing is perfect in life. But you have people from Minneapolis, you have people just from 5 days ago in Washington, D.C., they were having fistfights and fighting with the police. They were spraying and destroying. They were desecrating our monuments in Washington, D.C. 5 days ago, and nothing happened to them. And you can't have two systems of justice. That's why they went after me as a political opponent, because they felt they couldn't win without doing that. And we're going to win our cases, and we're going to be vindicated. But I have to spend a lot of time on that and money. That's what they want. After the election, they won't care. Although in my case, I think they probably will, because the hatred is pretty deep. But I'll tell you, they went after me as a political opponent. That's never happened in our country before, and it sets a terrible, terrible precedent.
What do you do on day one if you win? What's your first thing?
What do? I close the border. And I do two things, because I can do a lot of things simultaneously. I close the border. We don't want people coming in. We want people to come in, Harris, but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. They have to come in legally. We want people. I want people to come into our country, but they have to be vetted. They have to be checked. So when you say, what do I do?
That makes sense.
That, and I drill, baby, drill. I bring energy way down. I bring interest rates down. I bring inflation way down so people can buy bacon again, so people can buy a ham sandwich again.
Yo, bacon is like $8 for a standard pack of bacon. $8. I remember it being like half that a few years ago. I'll like cut back on swine just because of it. And some of you would say good, but I'm going to say no, it's not good. Milk, crazy expensive. Good thing I don't drink milk anymore. Just everything. Bread, produce. Forget about it if you're a meat eater. Pause. Like, it's a wrap. Steak, you're talking about $15, $20 for standard. I'm not talking about no T-bone, not no prime cut, nothing. I'm talking about just a regular slab of steak that I can remember when I was younger, be able to get that for like $3. And I'm sure inflation, you know, of course, but not to this magnitude and not such a short span of time. Like within the last 3 years or so, it's been insane. The inflation has been insane. It's become a lot harder to live. And the reason why a lot of people are starting to switch over is, one, inflation. It's just harder to live. Housing is crazy. We do know the vid had a bit to do with it initially, but right now, you know, the interest rates are terribly high. It's nearly impossible to try to buy a home. Insurance universally has went up substantially. It's just way more difficult to live. And if your job isn't offering substantial raises, then you're in deep trouble. And that's why a lot of people are looking for answers. We did not get these answers within the last nearly 4 years. It hasn't happened for us, unfortunately. And the question is, will we get these answers in the next 4 years for whomever the new president is? And it's a scary thought, but that's why so many people are involved and so many people are ready to just do it, because we are absolutely going to have a change, because it's official that the man in charge right now is not going to be president. And we don't know if it's going to be someone who's going to have similar policies, and we don't know if it's going to be someone who will have dramatically different policies. I think the border policy, in my personal opinion, is worse now. And I do understand that some people say, oh, we need people to do those jobs. Well, guess what? Hire more people for the vetting process if that's the case. Why would you, if you need more people, just allow anyone to come in unvetted? That's stupid to me. Stupid. You don't know who's coming. You don't know who's coming. And we're not saying the majority of people it is causing a problem. Just like when you complain about police officers abusing people, we know it's not the majority of police. But if one person does something wild, then we're like, oh, we need police reform. Well, guess what? We've had a couple migrants come over and do something wild. Right? So guess what? Reform. We're going to go ahead with this.
So that people can go to a restaurant and afford it. Because right now, people can't buy food. Your grocery bills are up 40, 50, 60%, right?
That's true.
She's agreeing to me. Oh, she's agreeing. Thank you. I like you very much.
Mr. President, I think we are.
But it's true.
Damn, she stopped him right in the middle of his charisma real quick.
Your grocery bills are up. And then they're mandating that you buy an all-electric car. You know, Elon Musk endorsed me, and he's a friend of mine. He's a good guy. He's a smart guy. But I'm against everybody having an electric car, okay?
I'm a car enthusiast. I couldn't possibly live with this. I would rebel to the bitter end. I never want to drive an electric car in my life, ever. There's actually a better technology. It's called hydrogen ICE, meaning hydrogen internal combustion engine. From what I understand, Toyota, Mercedes, and a few other companies are already working on such technologies. Hydrogen is the most abundant element, not only on the planet, but in the galaxy, at least. And it will never run out. Your cars will run normally. You can fill it. just about as fast as gas if we had the infrastructure to support it. And it's not something that's finite like batteries, which are made from rare earth metals. And China has a stranglehold on that market. And a lot of it is produced by child slave labor in Africa. That's just what it is. So do we want to support batteries? Okay.
Hey, I'm very much against that. You have to be able to, if you want a hybrid or if you want a gasoline-propelled car. But, you know, we have more liquid gold, gasoline, oil, under our feet than any other country. More than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia, more than any other country. I want to use it. I want to use what we have. I want to bring down prices, bring down costs, and I also have to stop the invasion. And remember, they're taking your jobs. These people coming in are taking your jobs.
Project 2025.
I think we have to leave it.
So yeah, that would actually change things a lot. Democrats are afraid of nuclear technology. It's become a lot safer now. The EPA has been going really hard on nuclear power plants, different things. There's ways to produce it, and we've had some serious issues with that. And yeah, why not use the liquid gold right underneath us? Just imagine if the price of your gasoline went back to 99 cents. Now you could start putting premium in your car. Now you could act, and just think about, it's not just the price of gas, right? We would be able to have such a surplus that we could actually export to other countries. It would bring up the GDP, right? It's also going to make goods cheaper. It makes a lot of things cheaper. Everything is transported, and the cost of that transporting has a lot to do with the gas prices. So we have to take that into consideration.
There by the Trump team.
All right.
So leave it. That is the last word. Thank you so much, Mr. Trump, for coming today and joining us.
Well, they just cut
Thank
that
you very
down.
much.
They've been telling us.
Thank you.
Man,
Thank
that
you,
was just
everybody, very much. Great
Thank
honor.
you, Mr. Kelly.
that was just rude.
Any of you
That was
emailed
just
on
rude.
details regarding the conversation with
I
Vice
did not
President
hear
Kamala
any-
Harris in September. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Oh damn, she's still talking. Look, listen, I didn't actually think that I was gonna get through this entire interview. I don't know how long our video is, but that actual video was about 38 minutes or so. Oh, okay, so we spent a little bit more than an hour, and that's fine. I'm very interested to see what your thoughts are about this particular video. If you think I did a good job at, I guess, breaking this down, you let me know, or not. Also, some of these policies, let me know what you think about some of what we got, and if you think this was actually more productive or unproductive, because I think that there were a lot of questions. It got better towards the end. It kind of calmed down a bit, but I think that we could have spent more time discussing policy because the time was just so limited. And even that abrupt cutoff, it was just rude, right? I would hate to handle people that way. But no matter what it is that you don't like about a person, regardless of how you feel towards a person, you really should be respectful. You really should maintain your professionalism. And just because you, don't speak like you're, and a lot of people get it confused. They think just because you're not yelling or just because you're not, cursing, that you're not being rude. No, you're being condescending. That's rude, and that's not professional. That's a problem. When you cut people off, that's rude. That's not professional. So it could have went a lot better, in my opinion, but I'd love to know what yours is. So let me know what your thoughts are down below. If you found value in this video, please send this to someone who you think may also find value or find it interesting, entertaining, or fulfilling. I appreciate you for always stopping by. And until next time, stay hungry, my friends. Never thirsty.
You know that ain't my style. You know that ain't my style. That ain't how I get down. That ain't how I get